Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. And let's have a little dabble into global politics this time. So this week we had news emerging that oil tankers had been attacked with some form of military ordnance. The US and British governments have said that the likelihood is that Iran are responsible. Iran has denied responsibility and put the blame on an American president who is clearly on a path to war. So what are we as citizens to make of this, who want to know the role of our own governments in building up this escalation? And the great difficulty is that either possibility is equally plausible. From the point of view of Iran, after many years of negotiation with Western powers, they agreed to halt nuclear programs which could have led to the development of a nuclear weapon capability. Now, regardless of what I might think as a Westerner to the way Iran have behaved since their revolution, I can appreciate the significance of their promise. Their major rival in the Middle East has nuclear weapons. They were being told that it's wrong to develop nuclear weapons by nations who themselves have nuclear weapons. Now, from a neutral perspective, Iran's commitment to halting the program was commendable. But then a short while later, the American people elect a clownish man-child who arbitrarily says that Iran has broken its part of the deal. It hasn't, of course, or there would be other stakeholders saying as such. Even the UK, the usually loyal poodle of whichever buffoon is occupying the White House, is not following that line. Nobody believes that Iran has reneged on its commitments to the nuclear deal. So now the United States has begun to apply sanctions again. Now, it's actually the US that has reneged on its promises, really. But it is not the one suffering. Even the other Western powers can do little, as when the US says that it will punish all companies that have dealings with Iran, not just American ones, then even companies of other nationalities fall into line. It's tyranny of the very worst form. So you don't have, for example, even British banks being able to deal with companies who trade with Iran. It's a form of tyranny and it's not being challenged. Now, whether this is because other powers don't feel strong enough to take on the US when they know the US is in the wrong, or whether they just don't care quite enough about Iran to take on the US in this matter, I don't really know. After all, it's not like Iran have made any efforts to make friends with Western democracies. The deal was entirely about economic concerns, much as with the UK's relationship with the EU that has turned sour so recently. It's never about peace. So last year, Iran's supreme leader said that if Iran can't sell its oil, then it will stop its neighbours from doing so. We also know that Iran is not above proxy military attacks on their opponents, and they have essentially gotten away with it in the past. Fighting their proxy wars is a tried and trusted technique for them. Not that they're the only ones who engage in such matters, but they do. So the idea that Iran would attack an oil tanker in the Persian Gulf in this way is perfectly believable. It could well have happened. Ordinarily, I totally accept that it had happened without much question. However, in this case, there are other possibilities, and they centre very much around Donald Trump. President Baby is a condemned man. There's every chance that he could win the next presidential election, yes. His approval rating is really low, but it's not a one-person, one-vote situation. Bear in mind that Trump didn't win the popular vote to elect him in the first place. But there is a chance that he would not win. Robert Mueller, despite Trump's claims of exoneration, has made it crystal clear that the only reason he has not arrested Donald Trump and charged him is because he is the sitting president and he doesn't have the authority to do so. So what happens if Trump loses? The second his successor is inaugurated, which in the bizarre presidential system is not actually the second he loses, he still gets a few more months as president. But the second his successor is inaugurated, Donald Trump will find himself immediately under arrest. Not really a risk he wants to take. So how does an unpopular president win another term in office? The standard response, of course, is to rally people around you by being the great protector against a perceived external threat. He's tried to make this the Islamic world. I note that he's at it again by attacking the Mayor of London. Never one to miss a chance to unite his supporters with a bit of Islamophobia. But that doesn't seem to be doing the trick in quite the way he'd hoped. So the only alternative is war. I mean, it worked for W, so why not him? So he reneges on what is essentially a peace deal with Iran, but claims it's their fault. In other words, he unfairly maligns an aggressive traditional enemy of the United States and its allies. And he knows full well it will not be a Cold War situation resulting from this behaviour. Iran doesn't throw up walls, it launches missiles. Or rather, it gives other people missiles to launch in a way that can't be tied definitively back to them. So it's not like the Middle East is normally calm and reserved. Trump has a ready ally in Saudi Arabia in ramping up the rhetoric against Iran and, of course, Israel. Then there's the evidence for Iran being responsible. Now, of course, they'd be the prime suspects regardless of evidence. You hear about this, you don't even need to see any evidence. You would initially think, well, Iran has said that they've threatened to stop oil tankers from other countries going out. Here we've got a situation where an oil tanker is being attacked. Iran are not above using military might to do this. Finger points at them. But Trump is saying that American intelligence has said Iran was responsible. But American intelligence is a fairly vague term. There's lots of agencies that feed into American intelligence. Which agency has said this? He hasn't said. You know, he's been really vague to say that he thinks there's inconclusive proof. You know, or conclusive proof, I should say, sorry. Incontrovertible evidence, whichever way you want to look at it. You know. Also, Trump has attacked American intelligence agencies as liars in the past, when they were linking his campaign to Russian interference, for example. So why are these agencies that he has labelled as peddlers of fake news now to be trusted implicitly on a matter that could lead to a long-feared war? So I see Trump as being someone who is actively seeking war with Iran just to get him out of jail. No other reason. I'd even be prepared to believe that he'd be hoping for an Iranian-resourced attack on the US mainland. It would be awesome for him if Americans died as a result of this. Fortunately, I don't believe that would happen. So in a sense, it almost doesn't matter who attacks the tankers. Trump would still share some of the blame, but it is possible that Iran wasn't even responsible, even though I would still say the likelihood is it probably was. Despite it matching past behaviour and in line with threats they made last year, does anyone believe that Saudi Arabia themselves wouldn't have done this in coordination with Trump's people? There's an awful lot of people who engage in proxy activities in the Middle East, both nations within the Middle East and outside it. And there's another oddity as well. Now, the information we're getting, allegedly from Western intelligence, is that the attacks were carried out by limpet mines. For example, US intelligence claimed to have evidence that they saw Iranians removing an unexploded limpet mine from the tanker after the event. But reports from the crew of the ship say that they saw missiles before the attack. Missiles purely in this case being airborne projectiles, don't know what type. Now that's in direct contradiction to the information released by the United States. Now it doesn't prove that US intelligence got its facts wrong, or worse still, fabricated them. The crew aren't military personnel and the situation is confusing. What we'd really want is an independent assessment. Now Jeremy Hunt, the British Foreign Minister, has said that British intelligence sees Iran as being almost certainly responsible. But what is that based on? He hasn't said. Are they just going with the so-called evidence that we're led to believe US intelligence gathered? Is it the case that US intelligence said to British intelligence, oh, it was the Iranians, and British intelligence says to the Foreign Secretary, oh, they said it's the Iranians? Or is it based on their own evidence? Similarly, did British intelligence actually deem Iran responsible? Or is it just the British government lying to back up Donald Trump, a president that our government has been shamefully sucking up to? After all, Hunt said Iran was almost certainly responsible, not quite as definite as America's position. Almost like he knows the evidence doesn't actually point to Iran, but doesn't want to contradict the United States position. But one thing is certain, it is all very messy, and it is going to get much messier before we come through it all. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content. Until next time, I'll see you later.